Welcome to the Senior Moment podcast, where we dive into topics that deal with seniors and senior living. If you are a senior, work with a senior, or have a senior in your life, this is the podcast for you. You never know what topics will be discussed in each and every episode. Hosted by Cindy Cannon and Brady Tabbs, this is the Senior Moment podcast. Hello and welcome to the show. We are excited to have Erin Wilfong here with Sivna. We're going to ask her to start off by introducing herself, just kind of telling us who she is and what she does.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I'm Erin Wilfong. I am the Assistant Program Manager of the Southwestern Illinois Visiting Nurse Association. Our program is called Services for Seniors, and I have been in that capacity working for Sivna for about 19 years, going on my 20th year next year. So,
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
it is a long time, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sounds like we got the right person.
It
Yeah.
sounds like we did get the right person. I was going to say Brady and I together have about 40 years
Wow.
in working with seniors. So I was going to say you're in good company. We've been doing it a long time too.
Okay, I feel great.
Yeah, that's great.
Can you just give us a brief description of your organization, Sivna?
Sure. So, the Services for Seniors Department is contracted by the Department on Aging, and we are the case coordination unit that handles assessments for people over the age of 60 in the 7 southwestern counties of Madison, St. Clair, Bond, Clinton, Monroe, Randolph, and Washington. I always have to make sure I remember them all. So we're here, there, and everywhere. We go into the homes primarily. Sometimes we do assessments in the hospital or the nursing homes, but primarily our care coordinators out in the field are trying to assess people and put services in place to help them age in place at home.
Perfect. That's absolutely perfect, which is why as we were talking about different senior topics, we thought as the holidays are coming up, and I was going to say my background is home care as so private home care, and for many years, and of course now I run Villa Rose, but also do have some ownership in a home care agency as well. And so we were talking about holidays. It seems like families go home for the holidays and maybe get a little shocked by what's going on in the home and aren't really sure the signs to look for, like, oh, maybe there's more going on here than I realized, right? Maybe there's some deficiencies or some things they're really struggling with. So I knew your organization primarily went into homes. So that's what I really want to kind of dig in today and talk about things that family members can look for as they have a senior in their life and like, oh, maybe it's time to get some help in here or time to look at something. So why don't you talk about to us with some of the things that people need to look for during the holidays when they're going home?
Personally, I think that environmental cues and physical condition are 2 pretty good indicators that maybe something's going on. If you're going into, you come home for the holidays, you go to see mom or dad, and you notice upon arriving at the home that, the yard's not cut like it normally is, or there's trash that's piled up alongside. And then when you step into the home, you notice that there's a lot of belongings that aren't in place. Maybe mom or dad was really good at keeping up the home, and you start to see visual cues that things just aren't quite right. We call it at work like the recliner syndrome. So you have a recliner and it has all of the stuff that someone needs right around there. That's a pretty good indicator that maybe they're having mobility issues, or they're tired, or they're depressed, and they just don't want to get up out of their normal seating spot. And so everything is around them that they need. You may also notice physical conditions with a client or a family member. So let's say, it's been a couple months since you've seen mom or dad. You go home and you can tell that they've lost weight. Maybe their clothes are hanging off of them. Maybe their appearance isn't kept up well. I think of my grandma. My grandma got dementia, and the first thing that we noticed with her was that her appearance was off. Here was a woman who was always well put together, had the nails done, had the makeup and hair done.
Right.
And we showed up one day at her house and was like, oh my goodness, something is going on with Grammy. Because she had missed her hair appointments. She wasn't getting her nails done. She was wearing the same clothes that she probably had been wearing for about a week. So we started to notice there. Then once we started digging in, we found out that, there was definitely more to what was known that was going on.
Absolutely. I was going to say, interestingly, I had never heard of the recliner.
I was going
think,
to say the same thing.
have you heard of it?
I haven't heard of that. I've been in
Mhm.
a couple houses though that I remember did have that situation, but I had not
Well,
known it was a thing.
right. I was going to say, my dad struggled with mobility. And when you were saying that, I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I remember my mom making sure he had everything around him that he would need so he didn't have to get up.
Oh, absolutely.
And what a great just clue, like, hey, they're struggling, right, to get up and do some things.
I always, too, will tell my staff and myself when I'm in a home looking at someone or assessing the situation, you can ask questions like, hey, do you have trouble getting up out of your chair? And they can tell you no. But if you say, hey, you know what, I'm a little thirsty from driving all day. Do you think you could go get me a drink from the kitchen or a bottle of water? That's when you're really going to see if something is going on. So trying to dig in, look at the cues, then ask a few more follow-up questions so that you can get them moving, get them into different areas of the home, because then you'll see the real picture.
Right. So when someone goes home, instead of doing everything for them, ask them to do some things, and that'll
Correct.
give you a clue. And the things out of place, I mean, again, I my parents have both passed, and Brady is just now getting into the season a little bit with his mom. But I was going to say, I remember me and my sister going, man, the house is a little cluttery. And mom was always so like tidy with everything, and it was definitely a clue to us, like something's going on, and I think there was probably more going on than we realized. But it's a good, especially for kids who are out of town and they come back and they're not having the contact daily or weekly
Right.
and seeing it, right? So, absolutely.
I also think a good point is, if you do come home and you're starting to see kind of some things out of whack or out of the norm, tapping into, checking with a neighbor. Has it been a while? Is there mail piling up? Do you see that the newspaper's been laying on the porch for the past 3 days and no one's picked it up? I mean, all of those kind of indicators and clues will tell you that something's going on that we need to address and hopefully get some help in there for.
Yeah, I was going to say, even here, I've had 2 or 3 people, the neighbors have brought them, because they were the ones going over every day. And so, I think the children were away and they seemed to be the contact, right? And so, kind of saw a need, like, oh, they really need something, and I'm going over every day. And yeah, so it is really interesting. You never know who in your life is going to help you see that, right? That need. What do you think the biggest challenge is for families as they see that their parents or their loved one needs help?
I'm amazed after almost 20 years in this job that so many people don't know that help exists. I feel like we're the biggest kept secret, and I feel like we've been around forever. I mean, my agency's been around forever. We've been around over 100 years. But I think the biggest challenge sometimes is just knowing where to start and navigating that system. There's so many different places out there. You see stuff, and especially with social media, and you see stuff and you're like, I wonder if this is something that my parents or my grandparents could qualify for. And then you kind of get down this road and you just keep rolling. And sometimes you get answers and sometimes you just keep getting passed on to the next place and call this place or call this place. They can help you. So I definitely think knowing where to start to try and navigate that mess and that maze is very helpful. I also think trying to get the senior themselves to come to the realization that they need help. I mean, a lot of people are trying to maintain that independence with every ounce of energy that they have, right? And I know I'll be the
Absolutely.
same way when I get older.
Me too.
And I think when you have children or grandchildren or other family members that maybe are not local or don't live, or don't see their family as often, it's easy for them to want to jump in and help. And I think that comes from a good place. But to a senior, it can seem kind of like they're trying to take over.
Yes.
So trying to get the senior to come to the realization that they need help, I think is a good starting point as well. And sometimes that's really hard to navigate.
Yeah.
I don't want to say they resent, but sometimes if you have kids that live out of town, they're not doing much for you anyway, and they maybe don't call often. So, and then all of a sudden they show up and they're like, "Mom, this is
Right.
not right. Something's wrong." They can probably, take that the wrong way
Right.
too.
Like, where have you been the past 4
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, I can totally see that. Right. So somehow trying to get them to realize that they need some help. I mean, it's definitely it's difficult waters to tread. And I know too for and on the in-home care part, just getting people to come in and help with some things around the house. It's there's a vulnerability there to allowing someone to come into your
Oh,
home.
absolutely.
Right. And so there's some, little fear there, right? You're not sure, can you trust this person? And, I mean, I can understand some resistance. And I guess as you said, that's going to be me too, right? How do you recognize, but obviously trying to maintain as much independence is so important. And I think, I know we've had a lot of families over the years in working within home care be able to kind of turn that and say, this is for my peace of mind. That seemed to kind of work a little bit with with the senior. If they said, Mom, I'm states away and I worry about you. I can't be here, but if someone can come in, then I feel like they get to kind of be my eyes and ears for me and can help when I can't. And sometimes seniors would kind of buy into that a little bit like, okay, well, that makes sense, right? They're worried about me. They can't do it themselves. And so I know it definitely can be challenging, though, to try to get them to accept it.
Do you have any helpful tips for when you're talking to your senior about getting help?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most important things is to focus on the person's strength. Hey, mom, I know that you're used to doing X, Y, and Z, but I can see that it's a little bit more difficult for you. Also, asking questions like, how are you feeling about managing your needs? Because I think once you turn that conversation back on them and have them reflect, they're going to come to that decision a lot easier than if you're the one broaching the subject and, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. So I think giving them choice is really, really important. I think being patient. Sometimes you can't walk in on Thanksgiving and say, we need help, we're getting it tomorrow. That's going to throw them into a real
Tizzy.
absolutely. So I think, trying to be patient, kind of plant the seeds, and then, maybe give them a time frame and say, I've noticed, and I think if you were answering honestly, you would say that you noticed too that things have changed. What can we do to support you? And then we're going to look into some options, and then we can decide as a family what we're going to do. I think the more that you involve a person's support system, whether that be formally or informally, that's really important for them coming to that realization that they're making that decision on their own.
And don't you think, too, when the family invites a professional such as yourself to come out to the home, that sometimes the senior takes that advice a little differently? They sure
Absolutely.
do, don't they? I mean,
sure
they're
do.
like, "Oh, she knows what she's talking. You don't know what you're talking about." But yeah, okay.
Right.
That I have found that too.
It's kind of like, with my dad, we would say, Dad, you really need to go get some labs drawn. Seems like you're tired or unsteady, and there's some things that we need to check out. Us saying that until we're blue in the face was one thing. But if his doctor, if we could get that doctor on board and say, my dad really needs to come and see you, and the doctor would say, Tom, it's time for you to come and do your labs and come to the appointment, he would do it in an instant.
Yes, yes, there is something about a third party person that is they're in the industry, they're professional. I don't know what it is, but yeah, there were times that I felt the same way. I could say the exact same thing that they were saying and they're just shaking their head, but then they say it, the professional says it and it's like, "Oh, yeah, we're going to sign up and do that right now." It's like, "I've been saying
Let's
it.
call the lab, set up an appointment.
Let's call the lab and set up the appointment." That's right. But again, I think, when you have someone come in and this is what they do and they're a professional with it, that they relate a little bit better. I mean, that's the generation that does what for the most part, does what the doctor says, right?
Oh, yes.
They follow, they're rule followers. And so But, when your children say it, like, no, I'm the parent, so I make those decisions and instead of switching it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to say, so Sivna not only goes out to the homes for the CCU program, right? Is that what it's called? The
Correct.
community care unit. And that is where really, if they fall under an income level, they might be able to get some services
Yes.
state provided,
Yes.
correct?
So the services that we're trying to specifically assess for on the community care program would be like an in-home chore worker or homemaker.
Mhm.
We also assess for the adult day service program. So
Okay.
anyone who might have dementia or depression or isolation issues or just needs some extra supervision during the day, that's a place that they can go and be supported. There's a nurse on staff so they can help with, vital monitoring, giving medications. They usually eat lunch. And then there's transportation provided to and from the center. We're also assessing for the need for an emergency home response system. So if you're noticing that your mobility is declining, you're falling, stumbling, the emergency button can also be used for environmental things. So let's say you're living in a home or apartment complex and you don't feel safe. You're able to hit the button and get help right away for those type of things. And then our newest program is the automated med dispenser. So medication errors, we all know that leads to a lot of hospitalizations and ER visits throughout the year. And so the automated med dispenser is a tool that can help make sure that someone's staying on top of their medications, taking their meds correctly. It will also then clue in family members if a participant has missed a dose or, the alarm keeps going off and they're not responding to it. So a good kind of peace of mind checking up for families that live away as well.
And that's definitely not something we really didn't touch too much on, but not taking the meds. That's a big, I mean, that can
Yes.
cause a lot of issues, right? If
Yes.
they're not med compliant and even just missing a dose here or there. And if they're using a med planner and, even if it's not one of these dispensing ones, even if they just go look, are they taking it? When you're in the home, just look at those. Because I remember, again, having those same conversations with my mom, and she'd be like, I'm taking my meds. But then I'd go in and peek at the med planner and, oh, we missed this day and we missed this day. Just one dose here or there. But when you have some heart issues, that's a major thing.
Right.
Well, then once she knew I was honed in on it, then she was a little better about taking it. And I know too, even here we have some families that have done the Alexa that just says, don't forget to take your medications, right? Just some things like that are some tools, again, allowing them to be independent,
Right.
still be independent with it, but just that little reminder. Absolutely. And so if they obviously don't qualify, you guys then have resources where they can get some of those same services where they
Correct.
pay.
Yes. We also we worked in tandem with the Agency on Aging.
Mhm.
They're a good provider for us and good support partner. We are so blessed in this area to have such wonderful senior centers that we can partner with. And that's where we get a lot of our referrals from too, because, as people age, they are more on the go. And so a lot of times, if someone's been going to the senior center and you know, the staff there notice that something's going on, they'll often refer to us as well. So we have good partnerships that we've connected with in the community over the years. And so making private pay referrals if that's a need, if they do not qualify for the community care program. We also have a lot of caregiver respite services that we can offer. So, and all of those can be kind of combined either, on their own standalone programs, or we can kind of partner them together so that we can come up with the best care plan to keep someone at home aging in place.
And the caregiver respite, you touched on that. That is such an important piece. I was going to say when we would see in home care, we would see almost I used to say it was almost a weekly occurrence that I would see children typically come into the office and just basically in a panic because the caregiver, whether it be mom taking care of dad or dad taking care of mom, dies suddenly because they weren't taking care of themselves. They were ignoring any health issues because they were so worried about who was going to care for the spouse and then the children really had no idea that the now parent, who was needing the care is really in pretty bad shape, and they cover for one another, right?
Yes.
And it was just, such a devastate I mean, most families just had no idea. They just had no idea. Maybe mom had dementia as bad as she did, and dad was covering for her, and now dad's gone. And now what do we do? What do we do? We're kind of shocked. And so you probably see some of those same things, making sure that caregiver gets a break and there is respite available to help them so that they can make doctor's appointments.
Yes.
And
The caregiver resources in the area have really changed, I'd say, post-COVID.
Mhm.
We recognized during that time, one of the good things that we recognized during that time was that caregivers are busy. I mean, they're overwhelmed. And so to fit in yet another appointment for someone coming out to the home to see them was just too much. And so a lot of times people would decline our services because they just didn't have the time for it. And so partnering with H Smart, we've made a caregiver respite specialist at our office. And a lot of times what she does is just call people and talk to them over the phone, give them resources, clue them into different online groups that they can be involved in and get support from, which has been a real game changer for a lot of our caregivers because they can do it from the comfort of their home. When mom or dad is napping, maybe that's when they get on the call and talk to Lisa. So that's been a really, really positive change, I think, in that area for our local seniors.
And it is important that they know they're not alone.
Correct.
Sometimes I think they feel overwhelmed and they feel like, gosh, I'm doing this and you're not alone. There's a lot of people.
The other thing about our caregiver program is that unlike other respite services, it is really geared towards the caregiver. Yes, we care about the person receiving the care,
Sure.
but we recognize, and you hit the nail on the head, that they do not take care of themselves. I mean, they're leaving their health, they're leaving their mental well-being because they're providing care, and that's their full-time job and their full-time focus.
And that swings right back around to what we were talking about. I mean, as we started talking about people going home for the holidays, they may be going home and it's both mom and dad. And, one may be covering for one, right? And so that can fall right into that same category. You can see, where dad's covering for mom, right? Mom's really quiet all of a sudden. She's not saying much at the table and letting dad do all the talking. That could
Right.
be a clue. Oh, something could be going on there.
I was just going to ask, do you ever get any resistance from families, or are most family members are most agreeable that mom or dad does need help? Do you ever run
How
into
much
any-
time do you got today, Brady?
Oh,
Just kidding.
goodness. Uh-oh. I think I know the
Okay,
answer.
you have hit a hot topic, Brady.
No, I mean, I think that sometimes families are in panic mode, and it's kind of our job to dial them back a little bit and say, okay, I see what you're saying. As a daughter, I would see the same things that I was, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I need to do X, Y, Z right now. I think if we can calm them down and get them to the table, sometimes then they help deliver the message to the person in need. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes they're in denial. Sometimes there's hurdles like finances, time, location, all of that comes into play too. So,
And I think, you talked earlier about the system, the senior care system. Brady and I just did a lunch and learn this yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. I was going to say this week, but it was yesterday.
This week has felt like 2 weeks.
It has. Yeah, I agree about that. Just trying to educate people on just the senior world, the care, different senior care options and the world. Because, as that was kind of the purpose for the podcast, was to educate. We see so many family members that come in, educated professional people, but they have no idea what the senior world and the senior services that are available. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. Kind of like you were saying, most of them are in panic mode. And we really, we thought, let's design something for people to try to get a little education before it happens to you, so that when you're sitting with a discharge planner and she is saying, your parent needs to go to rehab, and you're like, what Okay, what's that look like? You're already prepared because you know what that's going to look like, right? Or you've done a little research and you know a couple of options, or you know what your insurance is going to pay on those things. And so just trying to get people to learn a little bit of the resources that are out there, because we see the very same thing. We see people in panic mode, and then they maybe aren't making the right decision and the best decision for their loved one. They're just trying to plug the hole
Correct.
in the boat, right? They're just trying to plug it as quick as they can. And instead of assessing the hole and making a plan for what's going to work the longest. So you guys see
We do.
the same.
I think one thing that is really good about the staff that we have going out into these homes is, yes, we are assessing for programs that we're involved with, but we are also always just trying, if we can't meet the need, we are trying to find a resource or a program or a group or something that can, because we really want to help people age in place. I mean, all of the research says that that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Giving
absolutely.
control, maintaining independence, helping them remain as long as they can, as long as it's safe.
Right.
That's what I always tell people, as long as it's safe.
That's right.
To be at home. And then, when that time comes when they do need more help, then trying to explore places like Villa Rose or other, supportive or assisted living facilities, trying to go the next step, but making sure that they're prepared, that they're educated about what that means.
Right.
Endless amount of time with different people over the years. I mean, I can think of one client in particular. I have probably seen her for all of my 19 years that I've been in the Alton area. And every time I go, I say to her, Miss So-and-so, are you ready to move yet to supportive living? Because I think we're there. And she'll say, you talk to me about that next year, Erin. And so, but she knows because I have planted that seed. I have seen the brochures that she's left in her home. So I know she knows.
Yep.
And I know she'll let me know when she's ready.
Right.
But providing that information, and that's what I love about like all the senior fairs and stuff in the area, because they can take a brochure, they can take a magnet home, and you can think they're never going to think about this again. I can't tell you how many times, though, that we've passed out a Sivna pen or a Sivna magnet, and we'll get a call years down the road. Oh, I think I found this at a senior fair 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's really important work that we're doing as well. Even if it's not signing up people for services, it's just laying that groundwork for what may come next and where they can turn to get the help that they need.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the very same thing I'll say to my staff and even myself in taking calls from families. A lot of times as you're talking with them, you're thinking, okay, we're not who you need, but we always want to provide a resource for you because, again, it's not an easy system to navigate.
No, it's not.
And if you haven't worked in it, you're probably pulling your hair out wondering which direction I go. We've referred many people to Sivna because we know, hey, they're going to help you find the right fit for you and get someone out there to assess, because again, they're sometimes just getting a little help in the home, especially if they qualify for it, can really allow them to stay. Brady gave some examples of yesterday of some things that, making sure they're getting their meals, right? Making sure that, some of the things around the house are done are really important, making sure they're getting a bath or getting their laundry done. And
I liked what you said about, resources. We do, and I've done that for several years, and so has Cindy, and so have you. But I will say it's helping people. That's why we're in this business. That's what I always said for years. We just want to help people. They don't have to come to our place or this place or that place.
Right.
We just want to help people.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yes. I was going to say, if you go back and listen to the first episode where Brady and I kind of introduce ourselves, Brady and I both met each other, marketing, and I was marketing home care and he was marketing a facility. And he tells a story about how I said, let's work together. And he's like, home instead. And I was like, there are enough seniors around for all of us. And there are.
Home instead of what? I asked.
I know. Home instead of what? That's exactly what he said. Oh, but then he goes on to say it's been a great partnership.
It was back then, and it still is. Thank goodness.
It still is. It's such a good partnership. We hired him. He joined Villa Rose just a few months ago. So
yeah, it's a little over 2 months. months. I
It
think.
is, yeah, a little over 2 months. So he's doing our marketing. But yeah, I was going to say there are so many seniors. There's enough for all of us to help.
Yes, there are. Those baby boomers are coming up fast.
Oh, I know. I was going to say, we made Brett look at how many. Now, see, Brett, I'm going to make you look again on how many, I mean, if you look at the statistics that are coming our way,
Staggering.
oh my gosh, like it's going to be a wild ride. I was going to say, we looked at the daily rate, Brett, didn't we? Becoming baby boomers, it's turning 60. When do you guys conserve us? 60?
60.
Okay,
Yeah.
60.
Did you name it Senior Tsunami, or was that a
So
thing already? That's somebody said. I think it was you that said that.
I did say that. That was a
That is
home.
a really good
That was
description.
a homestead thing. When I ran a large home agency. I think you got to search the daily rate. I think daily number of baby boomers turning 60 daily. Oh, the 65. We'll take 60. Oh, 6. There you go. 60. All right. We did just pull this up. 10,000 every day.
That's crazy.
Are you ready? There's not enough caregivers. There's not enough care facilities. That's where it's going to get a little frightening, because you were talking about the safety, and I use that all the time with families. I say the same thing, like, can they get out of the house if there's a fire? Or are they going to start looking for the cat?
Right.
That's a problem. That's a safe issue, right? If they don't know to get out. And I use that example quite often. They got to be able to get out. And that's the scary thing, is where are we going to be in 15 years?
Right.
Because caregiver shortage is going on, and there's not enough facilities.
Well, I was just going to say, not only there's not enough facilities, but there's not enough staff in those facilities.
Correct.
So it's really a.
And I was going to say, you got a lot of assisted living facilities coming up or have, been built recently, but the cost of those are astronomical.
Absolutely.
And people might be able to afford to live there a year or two. But then what do you do? We've been talking, I mean, even for us, I mean, we're a very affordable, independent community. Our costs are very affordable in this area. But, we've got a couple of residents here with their couples, and one maybe has dementia, and they really need low income memory care. And it's not out there.
No, that would be a great market to tap into.
It would be. I mean, there's 2 long-term care facilities in our area, and, getting them into those it's almost impossible. And we've talked about, what do people do? I mean, in our area, it's a real need. And,
also with our agency, we have the Adult Protective Services Department.
yes.
And so, that speaks volumes to a lot of the cases that they receive. People might report a caregiver for neglect, and it might not be neglect. It might just be that they do not have the tools or the resources that they need to be providing the level of care that the person requires. And so again, that's trying to, locate a better option or a better resource. But a lot of the times, I think people are just trying to do the best with what they have. And a lot of times that's not enough.
Yeah, I totally can see that. And not really anything they can do about it. They're trying to do the best they can, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And yeah, I mean, we are trying desperately to work with these 2 families, because we know, there's just not a lot of options there, and your heart kind of bleeds for them, as far as like, how can you come in and kind of stand beside them and help them? And you're right, absolutely. It may look like from the sideline it's abusive behavior, but sometimes there's just nothing else they can do. And I was going to say, I did write down the Adult Protective Services. That's also a service you guys provide, and a tough thing.
Yes, it is. A couple of years ago, the Department on Aging decided to include in adult abuse or neglect the category of self-neglect. And if you think about someone who is self-neglectful, so Maybe they're not taking care of themselves in the best way. We get a lot of reports of self-neglect. And that behavior, trying to change something that's already been established for their entire life, is daunting. It's daunting. And trying to, that's usually a repeat thing. We might get, 5 different referrals over the course of a year on somebody for self-neglect. And a lot of aren't a success story because it is hard to try and change the brain, change the way of thinking, and try and provide the help that we need for those people. So that's been a really challenging part for our APS workers.
I was going to say we have, first of all, I want to say kudos to those APS workers that go into some of those situations. Whew. But I'm going to tell you a little story. Of course, can't use names, but I'm going to tell you a little story about an APS worker. So I told you I have a little ownership in a home care agency. And so they had gotten a call and they had referred to the CCU, but the APS worker was working and they didn't qualify. They had some finances they could afford to pay for it. And so we got a call for the home care agency to try to go out and see if maybe we could get some services. And we did. We made a couple of trips to the home and tried to convince the lady to have some services and she really wasn't gonna budge. And so a couple months went by and we got another call from the APS worker. And this time I got the call. And I told her, I said, well, we went out a couple of times and we just couldn't. And I could just hear it in her voice. Will you try again? Will you just try again? And I thought, yeah, all right, I'll go out. So I went out to the home. And I don't even know if she was the one that told me, take her McDonald's. She'll open the door if you take her McDonald's. I think it was. So I went and got McDonald's and she opened the door and she let me in. And I fell in love with this lady. And of course, she called me incessantly. and I went back to her home a couple of times. Now, they had started some guardianship procedures on her. And she called me on a Sunday afternoon and said, I think I should tell you, I think I have a guardian. And I said, really? And she said, yes. And so sure enough, I went home and I started Googling and she had a guardian. And I called that guardian and that guardian could not get into her home. She had went 3 times and she could not get into her home. And she said to me, I'm going to call the police and just have them take her to a nursing home. And I said, okay, can you give her a shot? Can you go get her McDonald's? She'll let you, tell you, if you go get McDonald's, she'll let you in the home. She did. She went and got McDonald's. And so she called me and she said, you want to do services for her? So we went in and we helped her about 3.5, 4 months. And I'm telling you, I was over there every week. And she moved in here. I knew she had fallen a couple of times in the evening. We were there, 5, 6 hours a day. She needed to be somewhere where
More supervision.
Yeah. She did. She needed that 20. She just needed to be able to pull a cord and get somebody if she needed them. Anyway, and she lived here for about 5 or 6 months. And then she did pass very suddenly, which is what she had prayed for. And so I will say, I will never forget the sound in your APS worker's voice when she asked me, will you try again? And I was like, I'll try again. And it was a success story. I mean, if I would not have went out and would have not taken some of those extra steps, and she was grouchy and she was difficult and she is probably me when I get older. And I did tell everybody, all of the workers here, like, she needs somebody to love her. Like, she just needs you to know that you care about her because, and then you're going to be great. And they were like, you're right about that. Like, it's okay. you may be mean to me, but I'm going to still care about you. And then, of course, you get to see the good side of her. But yeah, there's a little, that really wasn't too terribly long ago, about a year ago. So yeah, they do a great thing. And I can only imagine being an APS worker and some of the,
I always think of them as like the unsung heroes because they have such a hard job, but it's such an important job. And they often have to network with, police officers, EMTs, physicians, the court system. All of those are sometimes hard to navigate. And yet here we are, we're being the advocate for this older person or this person with disabilities. And so I think that as especially nowadays in culture and society, I see some of the towns around us becoming better about that, like learning to train their officers on how to deal with difficult people with dementia, people with mental health issues, people with disabilities. And I think that's a great step forward. I think we continue to build on that and continue to build on that. But yeah, it's a difficult job sometimes dealing with people in their homes, in the place that they want to remain. And again, I think all of it stems back to trying to maintain their independence.
yeah, absolutely. And for someone too, like you said, who's so, just hell bent on not, they don't care, right? The self neglect, but yet you want so badly to want for them to, but it's really hard, isn't it?
It
There's
is hard.
really, I can only imagine walking out some of those doors but of course I have a soft spot right here for some seniors. And I was going to say, and I have realized that it is just a thing. I was going to say, we do this little farmer's market. And for some reason, I'm over like just down talking to the little senior and was in a wheelchair or something. I'm like, oh, it's just, yeah. And that's why we are all in the industry that we are. Yes.
I was just going to switch gears. Now
Switch gears on
switch
us.
gears just a little bit. Okay. Now you talked about the one lady you've known for 19 years. You build relationships with these people. If they fall or have an illness and need rehab, do you have much to say about that, or is that a family decision, or do you have any input?
We do in the terms of that's another service that we provide to the state is anyone over the age of 18 that's seeking a nursing home level of care. We have to do an assessment. So it's called Choices for Care because they do have a choice for their care. I like the way that that's named because that's important. But we go and see people either to assess them if they're in the hospital. If they've already been to the nursing home, we'll go see them at the nursing home. Or we may follow up with them when they come home from the nursing home. So we're in a kind of the pre, sometimes during, and then the after as well, which is nice. That continuity of care is really important, especially if you've built a rapport with somebody. I always tell this story. So a couple of years ago, the Alton area got too big to handle for one person. And I was stressed. I was overwhelmed. I'm glad that my boss recognized that. And we decided that, we needed to divide that district. And so I had to give half of my caseload over to somebody that I had trained. And I felt confident in her abilities. But so many times, I feel bad for her because so many times people will say, is Erin still around? I miss seeing Erin. And it's nothing to downplay her abilities, but secretly inside that makes me feel good that people still remember those relationships that we built over those kitchen tables all those years, and just, I get to know them. I get to know their families. I get to know their grandchildren. And so, when I have some of my people in the community that then either make the decision or the decision is made for them to move on to more supportive care, sometimes I'm able to see them. I go out to different places. A lot of my people go to Evergreen Place and Alton just because that's my district. So sometimes I'll see them there. Sometimes I see them at the nursing home, which is nice. Not that they're in a nursing home, but it's nice to see them. And then, like I said, sometimes then when they get to come back home, I get to see them as well. So that's the good part of my job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And choices are so important.
Absolutely.
Every time I've spoke when I worked for a rehab facility, long-term care, but I've always said it's important to know they have a choice. They have a choice. And it also makes them feel better to know they have a choice.
Yes.
And, but yeah, it's just very important to let them have that.
Yes. It's kind of like, with my kids, the best times when I was parenting my kids when they were little, they're both teenagers now. So excuse the gray hair, but, but when they were little, and I wanted them to do something or I wanted them to see something the way I wanted them to see it, giving that choice so that they felt in control, even maybe though they weren't. That's kind of what we're talking about. I mean, and it's not underhanded or anything. It's just trying to bring people to the realization of what they need to see, that they're sometimes reluctant to see themselves.
And I was going to say, like, even in direct care, I mean, that's still something, giving them the ability to make choices are so important. Even if they can't even pick out what clothes, holding up 2 shirts and saying, which one would you like to wear today? Would you like to wear the pink one or would you like to wear the blue one? Right. At some point, if they do have to go to a very strict care facility, they're telling them what time to get up. They're telling them what time to eat. I mean, they're such on a regimented schedule. I just remember trying to give them any choice that they could have just makes a big difference. Do you want to take a shower before breakfast or after breakfast? That's a choice, right? So giving them some independence is so important.
And they're probably not getting the choice between the 2 shirts either anymore. They're just
Right.
getting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Well-
really, if you think about I always tried to put myself in their position. If someone told me what to do from the moment I got up till the moment I went to bed, boy, that would be pretty daunting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I think if they would recognize that and see that there was better education for caregivers and direct care staff,
Yes.
I think they would welcome it because your incidence of behaviors is going to go down.
Absolutely.
That's going to make your job a whole lot easier during the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It totally.
That's
yes,
like a role
that's right.
role reversal program that would
Yes,
probably work.
Right.
if somebody did that.
Absolutely.
Just circling back, a little bit, kind of what you were talking about. In my mind, I just kept thinking advocacy. I think it is so. We talked a little too yesterday with our audience about having an advocate, someone that can speak up for you. When you're in the hospital or you're going through something, a lot of times you're on medication that you're not thinking clearly, right? And as you were talking a little bit about the choices and them I just kept thinking having an advocate is so important with seniors. It's like find someone that can speak up for you on your behalf, because I mean there's other people, I know there are other people trying to do their jobs, but I had a situation with my mother, and I constantly just she had stepped on a nail. My parents lived on a farm and she was in her 70s, but she'd stepped on a nail and we had cellulitis in the foot, just awful. And the doctor was concerned she had had a bone infection. And so he had sent off for some testing. Now they've got my mom on all kinds of medications. I mean, she she probably knew her name and her birthday, but that was probably about it. Anyway, they came in and they said, "Well, we're going to release her." And I said, "Well, the doctor was just in and he's really concerned about the bone infection." And they said, "Well, we're not sure where that's going. So basically you have to be out by 8:00." And I was like, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere until we know we do not have bone infection. And so I ended up talking to the doctor, like, who's calling the shots here? You were just in here, right? So my mom had a bone infection
Oh my goodness.
and they had to put a PICC line in and put her on antibiotics. The doctor told me, he said, your mom would have lost her foot. That is how bad the infection was. He said, if you would have taken her home and you would have thrown a fit to those workers, she'd have lost her foot. I wouldn't have been able to save it.
Wow.
And so that after that episode, I thought, what would have happened if my mom would not have had me to speak on her behalf? She would have just got her bags and went whatever they would have done. She would have done exactly as they told her to do. And because I pushed back a little, and that's hard to do. And there are a lot of families that really struggle with that. It's hard to speak up and ask some questions, but advocacy is, have a plan. There's someone in your family that can speak up on your behalf. And I think that that's important, as you were talking about kind of following them through the years and having this relationship with them and being able to kind of follow them into their next care. So you can kind of speak to, hey, I know this person,
Absolutely.
I know who they are. I know I've been working with them for years, 19 years. She's still not going.
She's still not going. But guess what? I'm seeing her next year.
Okay.
And maybe as
next
a 20th anniversary present, she'll finally agree.
She'll go. We did. We talked about supportive living yesterday because, people don't know that that's an option. And we were very lucky to have a couple facilities in our area. And I know you talked about Evergreen, and that's a great facility for people that, that need that. So absolutely. Well, I was going to say, Erin, this has been a great conversation.
I agree.
I thank you so much for coming in. As we kind of wrap things up, why don't you just tell people how to connect with your organization or connect with you? Just give us a little bit of information about where they can get a hold of Sivna, and maybe they might need some services or they might need to find some information. Tell us how that can happen.
So we have a website. It's sivna.com. And on there, on the website, is a contact form. And you can be anonymous. You can put your information in there. Get a lot of referrals from family, sons or daughters that are just looking, hey, are you the place that can help us with XYZ? And so that gets submitted, and then one of us follows up on it, and we put in a referral to go see somebody. We can also be reached locally at 618-236-5863. That's our main office number. Those are probably the two best ways to get in touch with us directly.
Okay, perfect. And I was going to say, I'm pretty sure we can probably link that website to this podcast so people can just click and connect.
Amazing.
So,
Awesome.
I know. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, this has been great. Great. We hope as time goes on, you'll come back and visit and do another episode with us. So
I would love to.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you everyone for listening, and take care.
Thank you for listening to the Senior Moment podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to like, follow, and share wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We hope you'll join us next time. Take care, everybody.